I didn't watch this whole video. I watched like the first 30 seconds to get the gist of what Mutahar was talking about, and he's talking about video games, and it all has to crash down soon. True. People like me, we're already out. Like, I can't even afford Game Pass. I mean, I could, but I'm not gonna afford Game Pass. I've got way better things to be spending money on than a subscription service for games that I barely play. I don't play new games. I don't really play console games, really. I play retro games and indie games, and only certain indie games. I don't, like, go through and, like, buy 10 new indie games every month. I buy one game every few months, and it might be retro, it might be indie. Every once in a while, I'll buy a new game. I bought Oblivion Remastered day one. Amazing. Glad I bought that. One of the best purchases video games that I've made as an adult. I'll even skip out on games I think are great that I would love, because I know I'll love them later too, just as much, if not more. Like Expedition 33, whatever that game is called, Obscura, whatever, Obscure. I'll be playing that in the future. I don't really have time to play video games all the time, so there's no point in buying multiple that I'm just not gonna play, and by the time I get around to playing them, they're gonna be on sale anyway. So when I'm really itching to play it, that's when I'll buy it. I don't know, I'm rambling.
Hello guys and gals, me Mutahar. I got a bit of a short little video that I wanted to talk about in regards to why the AAA games industry, I really
He says this is a short little video, but it's 22 minutes long.
think, at least specifically, should crash and burn. Games are expensive. And, you know, with all the prices jumping up from $60 to $70 to $80.
Not for me. I don't pay that. I don't pay more than $15, $20. Sometimes I'll pay more than that. Oblivion Remastered was $50. I bought Baldur's Gate 3 when it came out. That was like $60. I bought Cyberpunk 2077 with the DLC for $60.
To what I guess people are thinking by the time GTA 6 drops to $100 per game, yeah, it's not looking that pretty.
I'll wait for GTA 6 when it's on sale for like 20 bucks.
Now, one thing I want to start off with is I don't want to see the console war or any war in the comment section below. There's a lot of moving parts here, and I'm not going to sit here and blame one person or the other. I will, however, throw every one of these companies under the bus right now real quick. Not too long ago, we looked at PlayStation. They jumped their prices up a little bit across the world in special regions for that PlayStation 5. Yes, one of the most boring gaming generations as of right now.
I've just got something to say about the possible future looming price increase. If they don't increase their prices right now, they're gonna look really bad. If they increase their prices right now, people will talk about it and they'll be upset about it. But then the next person will increase their prices, and everybody will forget. Nobody's talking about Nintendo anymore except to bring up the fact that they were the first ones to do it. Everybody who's upping their prices right now are smart. And Sony, if they're the last ones to up their prices, they're going to be the ones that everybody talks about at the tail end. They're going to be the ones that everybody's mad at because they were going to be the last one to do it, the one that everybody's talking about. They're going to be the straw that breaks the camel's back.
Yeah, all of it's going up in prices. Xboxes? Do you know that they're pricing those things up, ladies and gentlemen? How up? Well, if you decide to get the cheapest Xbox Series S, it's going from $300 to $380. You know, you had to do some crazy black magic to get somebody to buy an Xbox in the first place, because we all know how quick those are flying off the store shelves.
Everybody that I know that bought an Xbox, that has an Xbox currently, got it used off of Facebook Marketplace for like $200 for the Series X. By the way, what they're selling the Xboxes for in the stores do not match up to what people are actually paying for them for used ones online. Usually it's about 2/3 the price of the brand new version is what the used market is like. It's looking like it's half, and sometimes it's under half. With games and accessories. My brother bought an Xbox with 2 controllers and a few games for $200. The Series X. Nobody's buying it. Especially this late when we're feeling the next console generation just beyond the horizon.
Yeah, you know, that's just going up. I mean, you know, for some crazy psychopath that thinks a 2 terabyte Galaxy Special Edition is $600 originally, now it's $730. They probably should be shot into the galaxy for thinking this is a reasonable increase. Nintendo Switches, far as Canadian prices go, $629.99.
Usually by this time with the older consoles, when we're starting to get into the next gen, they start releasing their slim models and start dropping the prices. We didn't get that. We don't got slim models. They released the slim models along with the regular models. That's what the Series S is. That's the slim model, but with some downgrades this time. But we usually get slim models and price drops. We're getting price increases and nothing to show for it.
Meaning you go to the fucking store, you get the Switch and a game, you're probably looking at like, I think $800 at least after taxes.
Get you a mini PC, get you GOG and Steam. That's all you need. You'll be able to play games. You'll be able to buy games.
In Canadian buckaroonies to go pick up a little handheld Switchy. There's going to be a lot of people who are trying to convince their wives' boyfriends to put that money down. But you know what? Honestly, everything's just getting way more expensive here. And, I used to live at a time where
I've been priced out my entire life. I say this a lot. I was a rental kid. And then when physical locations for rentals died, I stopped renting. And that's when I stopped paying money for games. Now, like, I buy 3-4 games a year.
Granted, when the PlayStation 3 dropped, I'm not super old, I'm 31. But, granted, when the PlayStation dropped, it used to be a time when I remember the PS3, it dropped at, I think it was like $600. Motherfuckers had to go and get their kidneys removed to get that PlayStation, okay? That wasn't even getting a game. But obviously, if you waited, as all good things come to those who wait, I guess, you would end up getting a PlayStation, down the road. It would slim up. You get the little Ozempic running through these consoles. They'd slim up. They'd go hit the gym. Bam! You get a cheaper system. And then sometimes they'd really hit the Ozempic gritty. They'd like double barrel that into their bodies. You might get a super slim towards the very end of a console generation. It seems like this is the only generation where if you don't buy a system day one, quite literally, 4 or 5 years down the road, you're probably just going to end up paying more across the board, okay?
Unless you go used. If you go used, the market's very different. Because a lot of times they're increasing the prices because they're getting the last remnants of people who are going to buy one to squeeze out that last dollar. Because there are people that still are going to buy one. There are people that break their consoles that are going to buy one, a new one. And they don't care about the price. But if you go on the used market, it's about half the price right now. At least from what I'm seeing. I'm literally looking at a listing right now that's $200. Comes with a game and a controller.
It might be one thing if this was like a pro version of the console, where it was mostly geared towards people that just had an insane amount of money to begin with, or a lot of disposable income. But you're looking at even the cheapest options going up, it ain't looking pretty, okay? I used to recommend buying like a console, like the cheapest console, if you couldn't afford PC gaming. If you didn't, because generally speaking, that...
Now PC gaming is cheaper. Because you can just buy a $300 mini PC, and it'll play most games. It's just like buying an Xbox Series S. There are some games you just can't play. But you can still probably run all of the games. It's just they're not going to look good.
Xbox at $300 was not a bad deal if you wanted to play something like GTA 6 day one. Even a computer that could play GTA 6 on launch would probably not cost you $300 at the time to run it, even at its most minimum settings, okay? Unless you really stretched your dollars and sought a sale. That's not the world we live in, ladies and gentlemen, with how wild supply chains and how wild tariffs have become. It's an entire hobby that's become exponentially more expensive as time has effectively gone on. But one of the things that I wanted to talk about more specifically before we go back to the hardware stuff, which actually really isn't the fault for a lot of these companies, is the increase to that $80 game. Now, recently I was at the Xbox website, and
the problem with $80 games is some of them are definitely worth it. Some of them are worth $100. But most of the games that are going to be priced at $80 are not going to be worth it. And people are still going to buy it. Day one, people are still going to buy these games for $80. Day one. And then everybody's going to realize, oh, it wasn't worth $80, but it's too late. I already wanted the game, and it's $80 now. I'm not going to refund it. And the people who waited like a month are going to get it for $50 because they're going to put it on sale because only day one people bought it. And then the sales dropped off after day one Because you get those initial reviewers, you get those people that were hyped, you get those people that pre-ordered day one, and then everybody realized they made a mistake, and it drops off. Avowed, Assassin's Creed Shadows, Dragon Age Veilguard, Star Wars Outlaws. Concord didn't even make it.
And around May 1st, they announced some pricing updates. Oh boy, let's read the pricing update. So some of our new first-party games will launch at $79.99 beginning this holiday season. So beginning of this holiday season, Microsoft is, expecting that, yeah, those AAA big-budget games we're launching, they're going to be $80. So what kind of games you imagine? Probably Call of Duty. Let's be completely real here. And, one of the things that I've learned...
One of the things that I've learned is that base games cost full price. If you want the actual full game, you're going to be getting those deluxe editions. And they're going to be well over $100. I could see $120 for deluxe editions. Because that just feels like a good price after 80. Because it went from 60 to 100 or 70 to 100. Actually, it went from 60 to 80 and then 70 to 100. So 80 to 120, that feels right. Feels disgusting, but feels right. It went from 2 to 3 to 4.
In the gaming circle is when you're on the internet, you're a very loud vocal minority. In reality, every time I go to like a GameStop or something and I see somebody pick up a copy of Call of Duty, pick up a copy of Madden, pick up a copy of NBA, which, bro, at this point, the game might as well be a fucking casino you go to on Vegas with a basketball minigame attached to it. All right, yeah, those are still being...
And the only reason they don't have competitors is because they have a monopoly over the sports games. Nobody can make sports games besides them.
Sold like crazy. These games are hilarious because if you go to their like user reviews, it's like 3 out of 10. Like the people buying this shit feel like they're purchasing actual dog water, but yet they still buy it. It's like...
I have a friend that buys every single Madden and hates it every time, but he still buys it and still plays the shit out of it every single time. I think he might be a little bit of an NPC. He might be an NPC because he's one of the people that does the things that people constantly complain about. Stop buying these games. Stop giving these companies money. Why aren't you paying attention to what's going on? He's one of those types of people.
The amount of people that complain about the Switch 2 prices and it's like, I'm not going to go get a Switch. Then you immediately read the next day, oh my God, it broke all pre-order records. Bro, that's why the industry is allowed to get away with fisting you pretty much without any lube at any given time, okay? Because people just can go and buy it. Now, when it comes to the increase in video game prices, one of the things that obviously leads to that increase, like why a video game went from $50 to 60 to 70 to 80.
You know why people bought the Switch 2? What else are they going to buy? What else are they going to buy? They can't afford a house. They can't afford a car. But they got enough money to buy a Switch 2. So they'll buy it.
There is a genuine truth to video games getting more expensive to produce, right? So, for instance, let's say that you're somebody that wants to play like the new GTA, right? Like if we look at it from a mathematical perspective, like Red Dead Redemption 2 cost them $170 to $240 million Rockstar to make. That doesn't include the extra $200 to $300 million it cost for the budget for the marketing. So let's just look at the cost for just the payment of developing the game. That's almost $250 million. Now, if you go back to San Andreas, which is a far simpler game in comparison to the heavy hitter that is Red Dead 2, from just a technical perspective, it would cost Rockstar at the time, I believe, if you adjusted for inflation, $15 to $23 million.
Yeah, when you get to this point, when you get so many people involved in your game, there are some people that are using the money for wrong things. That's called bloat. People that are wasting money just to waste money. People who are, like, for example, you pay $1,000 for an event, right? That's not very much. But really, the person that's throwing the event just wants to have a party and have free food. And you do stuff like that until you've spent $100,000, $1 million on just crap. Stuff like that happens all the time. That's how you get bloat like this. You get 30 people getting paid $100,000 a year to make sure the textures on the road look pretty. That's called bloat.
So that's how much money you're looking at for developing the game. And obviously the marketing is effectively double that. But yeah, games are just substantially more expensive to produce.
No, they're not. No, they're not. They're just doing too much. They're putting in, they're trying to make like 5 games in one in a lot of cases. Instead of just having like a campaign and then a multiplayer mode, they've got to have like 5 different multiplayer modes, and then you got to have a side game. Then you got to have like a mini game multiplayer mode. Talking to you, Call of Duty, because they got Call of Duty campaign, they got the zombies, they got the multiplayer mode, they got Warzone. They're doing too much. Games used to have like campaign and then something you can do after you beat it, or it has a multiplayer mode. And that was it. And it was small. And it was fun. That's all we needed.
It's kind of crazy when you look at the development and time for a video game. It kind of rivals that of like some of the most insane Hollywood masterpieces. Like AAA gaming is such an expensive behemoth because teams have jumped from tens of gamers, tens of programmers, tens of developers to hundreds of developers, artists, individuals that are doing tons of different jobs to create our different video games that we all know and love, okay? To conceive making a video game is not something that starts, in like year 1. It starts year 1 and probably ends like year 7. Like realistically looking at a game like GTA 6, for how impressive that it is and how much we all gawked over it, I'm sure that the game is probably a concept since GTA 5, and since then, development has sort of happened. There has been an actual paper trail, a receipt for development beginning probably since then. And obviously that ramps up as the years progress, but ultimately it's a game that costs hundreds of millions of dollars to make. And obviously for a game company, it's not the day where they exclusively develop games for one console. No, in order to make your money back, you got to be developing for everything. PlayStation, Xbox, phones even.
Not PC, GTA. Where's that release? That's the only reason I'm not going to be playing it day one. So I'm waiting for a sale whenever it releases on PC. I'm not even going to get it on PC day one because of that shit.
PCs, everything. And everything has to hit on every cylinder for you to make as much money back as quickly as you can, and hope to God that if your game has some live service component, probably also starts generating hundreds of millions of dollars every year. That's just how expensive a video game, and that's how expensive the demands have gotten. So sometimes a video game is successful. Like obviously nobody's going to say that Red Dead 2 was a failure. Obviously very successful for Rockstar. But there's also games that cost hundreds of millions of dollars to produce.
We gonna talk about Concord? Gonna bring up Concord. Everybody always brings up that game.
Games like Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, which is one of my favorite games.
Oh yeah, didn't that technically fail? It was super, super popular and people loved it, but it technically failed.
But if you ask Square Enix, obviously, I'm sure it wasn't the most, selling game in their mind. It wasn't the game that met expectations. In fact, it apparently failed to meet expectations. And I think a lot of that had to do with the fact that they released it exclusively on a PlayStation 5. It was the second part.
It seems like Sony's just been doing this. They've been spending hundreds of $millions on games that are exclusive to them or are just like not hitting right. And they completely flop and fail. Marathon's looking that way. It's not going to be exclusive to Sony, I don't think, but that's Bungie.
Of a trilogy, a pretty popular trilogy, mind you, but generally speaking, those sales do tend to drop off. And when you have like a 50-hour commitment for the previous game requirement to go into the next one, yeah, I'm sure there's plenty of people that are probably going to skip or at least wait until everything is out in a convenient like $60 package down the road in like 2030. So yeah, it's a tough industry to kind of be in, and it seems like it's getting more difficult for the AAA people. Now, if you ask me personally,
I don't play AAA games. I never really have, except for like PS2 and Xbox 360 era. After that, I started jumping in. As soon as the live service games started, as soon as we started getting all this corporate slop, as soon as the global suits decided that gaming was going to be their venture because it was the most profitable entertainment medium in the world. Even more profitable than movies, even more influential than movies. That's when the suits started coming in, and that's when we started getting slop.
I think that for most games, I was reading somewhere that I think it was over 90% of PC gamers are playing older games. And while this is skewed,
I'm one of those.
With people playing stuff like Roblox, Fortnite, Grand Theft Auto Online, games that are regularly updated, but obviously released probably a decade ago at worst. Yeah, those games are still obviously very popular.
I would argue that most of the people playing those games are children that have just started playing games. I don't know very many adults who still play those games. I know a lot of people who did play those games at different points of time, and they might pick them up and play them again. Probably not GTA Online. GTA 5 Online, I should say.
But I think for a lot of older games, like me personally, dog, I've been playing so much MGS Phantom Pain. I've been playing like Arkham Knight again, a game that might...
I just beat Ratchet and Clank on my gaming channel, link down there in the description. And I beat Sly Cooper. I'm about to run through Jack and Daxter.
As well, I think it's basically almost a decade old at this point. A lot of these older games, in my opinion, just kind of hit harder. Like, there are 30-hour games with, 30-hour worth of experiences, and they don't stretch longer than they need to. I haven't played Assassin's Creed Shadows.
There are games that are like 100 hours plus long on PS2 that embarrass these modern games that take the same amount of time or more. I think because there was more limitations and more passion. They had to do workarounds that actually innovated the gaming industry.
Beyond the initial 2 weeks, I haven't even finished that game because while I enjoyed 10 hours of its gameplay, I didn't want to do that 10 hours 10 times over repetitively just to see a credit screen roll through. And honestly, I think the AAA industry is probably more so threatened by the fact that games like Expedition 33 exist that have released at price tags under $60, made by a group of 30 people that has actually gotten 2 million sales in 10 days?
I think games that are releasing at $50, $60 are going to reach astronomical numbers, astronomical levels. Especially games that seem like they put in more love, more passion, more effort than the AAA titles that cost $80 plus. $80 plus $40 for that deluxe edition.
It's been out. It's fucking crazy to see some success happen that's not in the AAA space when a game company comes out and produces an actual masterpiece.
These are the new AAA games. We're gonna see more of this. As they become more and more popular, more people talk about them, more people get tired of AAA. We're gonna see more of this. And I'm here for it. I love it. My wallet's ready.
That resonates with gamers versus just being an open world checklist slog that you're basically digging through. Because if anything, I feel like I've been kind of...
I think he's talking about Assassin's Creed there. Or really, any open world, AAA game. They all do the exact same things. They're all just Assassin's Creed with a different coat of paint, different game mechanics. Like when you're running around, it feels different. But you're just doing the same things.
Talking about the game industry crashing, and honestly, when it comes to the AAA side, I am so fucking ready to see this industry crash. Simply because if anything needs to be reset, it's probably those bloated AAA development budgets. It's probably the expectation of this industry that if gamers are expected to pay $80, shouldn't the quality also go up beyond just shinier graphics? Shouldn't games be taking real advantage of the hardware we provide them? And
dude, I see so much of people saying this game is 10 out of 10. Look how beautiful it is. Do you know how easy it is to make a game look pretty in the Unreal Engine? I could do it, and I don't even make video games. I have no idea what I'm doing.
Hardware genuinely advancing. These are things that, honestly, if the industry isn't willing to address, there's a real big black pill here, right? Gamers only have a limited amount of money to be spending every year. If you're going to be telling somebody who can only afford, 3 games now if they're priced at 80 or maybe $100 a pop?
I can't even afford 3 full-price AAA games. No way. No way I can do that per year. I can't afford 3 of them.
They're going to be having to pick, if they're going to pick between AAA people, they're probably going to look at GTA 6 first and maybe the extra 2 games. So really these companies are kind of, putting competition between each other at a much more intense pace.
3 AAA games per year is $240. That is a large chunk out of my impoverished paycheck.
And that's not something I think is absolutely sustainable down the road. Companies like EA, Activision, Ubisoft, hell, even Rockstar, a lot of these companies are really going to be having to put each other on the chopping block. They're really competing with each other at the end of the day.
We're going to see a lot of companies just fail. Over the next few years, we're going to see a lot of companies that we used to love shut down. I can see Bungie being one of them. They've got all kinds of crazy stuff going on right now.
Because when it comes to things like indie gaming, for me, indie gaming is pretty much where I'm at these days. I've been playing a lot of this one game, Cubic Odyssey. The demo came out, really been enjoying it. Games like No Man's Sky have obviously been attracting me as many times.
I always find myself going back to No Man's Sky. I'll get into it, do a whole bunch of stuff, get bored of it, and then I'll drop it, and then I always come back. It always pulls me back in. I think it's because of the screenshots in the video clips online where I'm like, this game is so good, it's so pretty. It's everything I want out of a space game, and that's true. I've probably put in almost 2,000 hours into No Man's Sky so far.
It's updated, but even from a single player perspective, games like Signalis, which cost me a fraction of a $60 game, but give me hours of actual fun gameplay, memorable gameplay, is the kind of stuff.
Not just hours, games that you can come back to years from now. No Man's Sky, I could see eventually shutting the servers down, but you'll still have the actual single player experience there. You can play that game offline, it's there. These games, you can always come back to them. These AAA live service games, if No Man's Sky would have been made by Activision, it probably would have been shut down by now. They wouldn't have been releasing content every month for free. They would have destroyed it. Threw in microtransactions, all kinds of DLC packs and expansions. And then they would have shut down the server, and then you wouldn't have been able to play it ever again.
That I actually end up chasing. Especially as a lot of AAA companies are kind of relying more on remakes to kind of stave off these development budgets as time goes on. I really feel like it's the indie market. You know, the market where games are 20, 30 bucks a pop, but they give you actual hundreds of hours of gameplay.
That's where I am right now. $20, $30 games. Or cheaper, sometimes $5. I go as low as $1 sometimes. I paid $1 for Dead Island Definitive Edition.
Is where things are really important. Why would I choose to buy another tactical shooter when a game like Ready or Not exists for a similar but smaller price tag, yet gives me actual hundreds of hours of gameplay that I can play with myself or cooperatively with other people? It's a weird industry, and honestly, the prices going up is literally them just competing with each other.
Has anybody been paying attention to the first-person shooter genre in the indie games right now? Because it's popping off. They're going to be establishing what first-person shooter games look like in the future. Especially these Doom-like indie titles that are like using pixel graphics, and they look so amazing. They look like they play so great.
And I think that's going to become very apparent come 2026, when games are probably going to be priced at least 80 bucks, maybe 100 bucks a pop, and these companies are absolutely going to have to be fighting with each other for the actual gamer's dime at that point. Now, there's a lot of greed that I think companies are pretty responsible for when it comes to like the industry, right? Like, let's be real. When a game jumps to $80...
I think as games become more pricey, they charge more, like, higher prices. What is this? Street Fighter 6 Years 1 and 2 Fighters Edition. $85. What the fuck is that? You got a 2-in-1 right there for $115. $110. What is this? What is all this? Why are these so expensive?
On a digital perspective,
Test me Canada.
It's probably due to the fact that in some way, I think gaming companies have to find a way to make sure that their hardware can kind of make up. So generally speaking, in a lot of cases, most hardware companies, like whether it be like Microsoft, PlayStation, or Nintendo, generally it'll be the hardware sold at a break even. Maybe you'll make a little bit of money on it, or sometimes it can be sold at cost, right? So let's say that it takes you, I don't know, 350 bucks to make a console. You sell it at like $300, and your expectation is somebody probably buys a controller or they buy a game to make up for it. So I really feel like hardware is where most of the pain is really coming from. Now, to give you an idea, guys, there is a lot of panic due to tariffs, due to like massive issues around the world.
I'm not panicking. All these companies that I hate are panicking, and I'm loving it. The prices of my games aren't going up. Indie games, I think, are going to be getting cheaper because there's going to be more of them. There's going to be more competition. And I think AAA games, as they become more expensive, are going to get bigger and more bloated. And people are going to be overwhelmed and tired of them faster. And they're just going to be like, oh, we got to charge more again. People aren't buying them. Prices are going up.
Where one of the companies in the world, one of the biggest hardware companies, Apple. And now these guys don't make gaming consoles, but you can definitely game on a MacBook. You can game on an iPhone these days. You can play Resident Evil 4 Remake on the most up-to-date iPhones. But let's say you go and pick up the new iPhone 16 Pro Max, okay? Don't really know this naming scheme, but for $1,200, okay, I used to think phones back in the day, if they priced it at this, should suck my cock. Now, back in the day, you had things like the iPhone 3G. Now, this...
I paid $200 for my phone, and I can do anything that I want on it. I think people buy these expensive phones for the spectacle of owning the biggest, best, newest product, shiniest device. Because they never use any of these features. I have a friend who always gets the newest Galaxy because all the features, and then all he's doing on it is TikTok. And he runs his phone on 4K constantly, and it's always dying because he's running it max power for TikTok. He doesn't game on his phone. He doesn't make any kind of content. He does Snapchat with his friends. When he first got it, he played with the features and then never played with them again.
Senior citizen of technological design, you know, I was basically playing like what, flash game style things on this, you know, really tiny thing as compared to a modern iPhone, all right, which is significantly larger, significantly faster, and you can play actual RE4 remake on this, which I think is actually kind of insane that a handheld device is doing it. But a lot of that comes from the chips within this. The same chips, the same design, the same computer semiconductors that power our consoles exists in our GPUs, our phones. It's a pretty common thing amongst medical equipment, military equipment, really anything electronic comes and requires chips. So a lot of companies like Apple, Nvidia, Tesla, Microsoft, a lot of these big tech companies fight for the factory time of one company specifically known as TSMC. Now, this is an aerial shot of TSMC in Arizona. Now, TSMC is a company from Taiwan, and they basically, from my understanding, produce 90% of the chips internationally. So to give you a rough idea, companies like Apple or like companies like AMD or whoever produces the CPUs and GPUs for a lot of our consoles and cell phones and like cars, everything imaginable, typically they have, you know, people in their companies that spend millions, hundreds of millions of dollars. Hell, it can go up to like $1 billion from time to time, creating and basically designing chips, right? So roughly you'll use EDA tools, you basically design a chip, and then once you have a design pretty much thought after, your real confidential design, companies like this will go to TSMC or these fabricators. Basically the largest fabricator is TSMC. They'll tell them, hey, listen, we need you to make this chip. Now, the reason why TSMC is so important is that A, production of chips is really difficult. Like, I think TSMC spends somewhere like 100 billion US dollars to open up like 2 plants. So it's A, an expensive thing to go down with, but the process of building a computer chip is insane. Okay, so to give you an idea, you need to go get silicon first. In fact, producing a computer chip, I think like a professor of mine put it the best way. You can't ever call somebody dumb as rocks, because we as a human species has basically, like, we've found a way to get rocks to think. Basically, you go out, you get silicon, you get like ultra pure silicon, this ingot, you slide it into very, very thin discs, okay? Very thin discs we call wafers. Using technology like photolithography, okay, we basically take these designs and find out how to etch them onto actual silicon. And after a whole bunch of different chemical treatments, we have matched.
That was a lot. That was a lot being pushed into my brain that I'm probably never going to use. But hey, I kind of know how chips are made now a little bit.
Magically found a way to turn a rock into a very complicated piece of circuitry that is used.
It's a rock. It's a rock. A rock.
In most of the technology we use out there. In fact, thanks to that technology, you're able to watch a fat Indian guy tell you about this process over a high definition video on the internet. Okay, that's how crazy this shit is. So because of things like tariffs, right, on a lot of these semiconductors coming out of China, or Taiwan specifically, it has basically put the United States in a pretty precarious situation. So on one
I don't believe in China. I only believe in Taiwan. China is just mainland Taiwan.
hand, you can be annoyed at the tariff, but to look at it in the most charitable fashion, it's a way for America to effectively force its industries to start producing these chips locally. And it's not to say that locally chips can't be made. Like, there's other fabricators other than TSMC, like Intel. I believe Samsung is also pretty good at fabrication. There are other fabricators, like I think Texas Instruments, but making a computer chip is a very, very specialized field. And it requires very, very intelligent people and very expensive pieces of technology to create these things at the scales.
Well, it doesn't really require intelligent people anymore. I think they're using AI more and more to build these chips.
We want them. So for Apple, this basically costs, them apparently around $900 million in a hit onto their actual like sheets.
Good. Good. The company that's literally propagating slavery is losing $1 billion.
Once you factor in tariffs down the road. So every company, Microsoft, Nvidia, Apple, are basically scrambling to move their chains to places where they can minimize this bill as much as they can. So it's one of the reasons why games and, well, game products have gotten significantly more expensive. And that's probably the only part of this entire puzzle where I can look at these companies and say that's not actually greed. That's more of them actually trying to figure out how the fuck we're going to be avoiding a really expensive slap to the face. But generally speaking, the AAA games industry, to kind of like highlight this back into what it needs to be, I really think that needs to crash. Games are getting to $80 price tags a pop as of this like holiday.
Just AAA games that I'm not going to be playing. I'll still make fun of them. I'm still going to talk about them, talk about how garbage they are. Or how great they are if they end up being great. Still not going to pay for it even if it's a 10 out of 10. Not paying $80 for games. No thank you. And it's not $80, it's $80 for the base edition. Not including microtransactions. Not including deluxe editions.
And by the time next year comes around, by the time GTA 6 drops, I actually don't really doubt that games might even be $100 a pop by then. And honestly, in a field where I think that a whole bunch of, indie games...
People aren't buying our games as much. Quick, raise the price so we can make up for it from the people that are still buying them no matter what. Eventually, they'll stop paying for them.
Have sort of spiked up and sort of come out and basically gotten the attention of gamers. There is no better time to be, in my opinion, an indie game developer and sell games for a fraction of the AAA industry's cost, especially when a lot of these guys, maybe they're not making the most prettiest looking game in comparison, but playing a game like Schedule 1 or Shadows of Doubt or, well, Clair Obscur Expedition 33 is a very pretty looking game, but obviously it's not a big AAA release. Playing games like that over at least what the industry is still producing, these open world slogs that are supposed to be 100-hour adventures that realistically get boring after 5 or 10 hours. Yeah, I think it's a great way for indie gamers to really...
I think they probably build these like 7-hour, 10-hour experiences and then bloat them. Give you things to do in the meantime to get you away from the fact that they only have a 7-hour story. What you get when you take out all the extra bloat and just break it down to what it's supposed to be is Hellblade 2. That's what you get. 7-hour game.
Shine up, indie games to really shine up and be basically the place where gamers spend most of their time putting their hours into. I feel like a lot of this industry really aims to create the next big like live service product. And even in the AAA space, you see so much shit like the constant overuse of artificial intelligence, it seems, in massive projects like Call of Duty, to the point where it feels like, yes, the project is big, the project is bloated, the project may look nice, but ultimately I don't think it's worth that $80 price tag, and I know that it's not worth that $80 price tag, and I know for a lot of you gamers watching, it definitely isn't even close to the $80 fucking price tag.
Yeah, I ain't paying $80 for no Call of Duty game. Right now, there's still $60 on Steam for all the old titles. Are you fucking insane? Do you want people to play your games or not? Probably not. They probably don't want people to play the old Call of Duty games because that gets people away from all the new ones.
But yeah, indie gamers, man, I don't think that industry is ever going to die anytime soon. I think for all of it's considered, indie gaming is probably the only thing keeping gaming alive, safe, and secure.
True. Like, half of the games that I play are indie games. I don't play any modern AAA games. Closest I get is like Resident Evil 4 Remake, Baldur's Gate 3, Oblivion Remastered. That's as close as I get. I don't play any live service games. Anything that's got a storefront, get that shit out of here.
And I do absolutely envision a crash of the AAA industry, where when you got games like Grand Theft Auto 6 vying for the same attention that other $80 games are now asking for, maybe $100 down the road, I feel like it's not going to be just Ubisoft that's facing the music. I think it's going to be companies like Square Enix that are spending millions, hundreds of millions of dollars on every big project, when realistically they don't even need to. Realistically, it should be that their projects are, priced appropriately to produce, and they make millions, down the road.
They can spend 30 to 50 million, but they won't, because they think that bigger price tag means bigger profit for the investors. Investors see big numbers and they get excited about it. I think getting investors involved in video games was the worst decision of all time. Having all these major corporations go public and become multi-$100 million corporations, billion-dollar corporations that are run by people that are just looking to make more and more money, not make better and better games. That's how we get to this point, man. And I wasn't involved in any of it. I just kind of sat back and watched it all happen.
Games like FF7 Rebirth should not be financial, like, underperformers. They should just be better produced games, or more intelligently produced games at this point, too. But I think it's going to require more of these big...
Well, they can't more intelligently produce games because too much bureaucracy gets involved in corporations. Too many people want things in this game who don't play games that are just trying to make money because they think it'll make them money. And really, it just drives more and more people away. And they'd make more money, they spent less money, and took out all these garbage mechanics, and actually made a good fucking game.
Publishers to crash or ultimately downsize their projects before the industry kind of gets it, okay? Like, it's just a wild place we're in, man. Shit is just so goddamn expensive these days, and it doesn't, in my opinion, really need to be.
Yeah, and it's not just games that are getting more expensive. It's literally everything. And when everything's getting more expensive and we're not getting paid more, we're going to be buying less.
I think if anything, gamers have shown that if you just price something at like 20, 30 bucks and have a game like budgeted accordingly to that price tag for production, I think gamers are more likely to give you money down the road for a product that is better produced, better respectful of the gamer. And ultimately, you know, even looking at something like Obscure 33, they've been able to do something that I don't even think modern Final Fantasy or Dragon Quest or really any of the big AAA houses have even been able to accomplish. But that's just where my thoughts are, ladies and gentlemen. If you like what you saw, please like, comment, and subscribe. Dislike if you dislike it. I am out.
I agree. I think the gaming industry should crash. I think it needs to, and I think it's going to. And it's going to crash hard. And I'm going to laugh all the way to the bank because I don't play any of these games from any of these companies. And people are still going to hate me. They're going to be defending these companies, me talking about them. Saying, oh, if you don't play the games, then you can't be in the conversation. Well, fuck you. Guess what? I got free speech, bitch. You know what else I got? T-shirts down there in the description. You should buy one. I worked hard on the designs. I'm out.